In muddy streets overlooked by cold and unforgiving mountains, we join Arthur Morgan, a hardened outlaw who grapples with a familiar drama, a tale of ambition, betrayal, and the fragility of existence, echoing the conflicts explored by the great bard himself countless moons ago. Red Dead Redemption 2 masterfully weaves together Shakespearean themes of tragedy, treachery, and pride with contemporary storytelling techniques to create a poignant exploration of mortality. It utilises masterful foreshadowing to heighten the emotional impact of its ancient and yet modern beats. Today we will talk about foreshadowing, mortality, and contemporary storytelling as they relate to the tour de force that is Red Dead Redemption 2. The foreshadowing in Red Dead Redemption 2 is something that, as a wannabe writer myself, I find to be masterful. It's woven through the story like a perfect spider's web, gossamer fibres that you see only if you look hard enough. This spider web hints at future events in the story, and by doing so, creates pointers towards the characters' fates. It's something I picked up on having played the game more than is probably healthy, so here's a few examples. Jack saying he wants to be a gunslinger and his mother saying over her dead body, when that is exactly what happens. He becomes a gunslinger and she dies. When Susan says, "Well, you be well, Mr. Morgan," and he replies, "I'm always well, Mrs. Grimshaw." Yeah. Arthur coughing heavily when he and Javier move the pallet in the dubious family's barn. A long time before any sickness is hinted at, he coughs in that scene. Dutch's strange, early signs of paranoia in camp. If you stand near him too long, he loses the plot at you, and is quite deranged. But this, and the way it's mentioned that he killed that girl in Blackwater in a bad way, are signs that his descent into madness has already begun. When Sean is complaining about the knock on the head he's received during the second train robbery, and Arthur replies,
"At least you ain't got a hole in it,"
almost like he's staring into the future. Arthur talking to Charles about how Dutch would never
hide away in a cave somewhere. Goes against everything he stands for.
Even though that is exactly what ends up happening. And we end up finding out that Dutch, well, he doesn't truly stand for anything.
You're just gonna let the boy be made an orphan? It ain't like that. What is it like?
When Arthur returns the doctor's coach in Rhodes and the doctor says, "This doesn't cure anything terminal, but then you may not need it to." The visions Arthur has of either a stag or a coyote, depending on his honour level, also hint at a future entry into a world unknown. There's probably more that I've missed, but those are the most obvious examples that I can think of. Feel free to write any others in the comments. Regardless, I believe that these examples are evidence enough that foreshadowing, as a literary device, is used with great skill and some serious forethought in Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm not an uber fan of Shakespeare, but I have read Julius Caesar and most of Hamlet and some of Macbeth. And while everyone is pretty familiar with Romeo and Juliet, aren't they? Regardless, to me, there's some very obvious links between those plays and Red Dead Redemption 2. For starters, they are all tragedies. Tragedies starring heroes with tragic flaws, tragedies with themes of betrayal, of revenge and of redemption, tragedies that resonate with us because we all make mistakes. We all err in the face of a life well lived. Let's start with our tragic hero with a tragic flaw that leads to his downfall. Arthur is our hero. His tragic flaw is his loyalty to Dutch, and his downfall comes due to Dutch's increasingly unhinged decisions, and also due to a sickness that he caught whilst loyally beating another man to death at Dutch's behest. There's a small scene in camp, I've only seen it a couple of times, when Dutch asks Arthur to go and collect Herr Strauss's loans, saying something like, "It may not be glamorous, but it pays well." Sadly, his best friend, his mentor, is indirectly responsible for his debilitating illness. Arthur's loyalty to Dutch is his downfall, just like Julius's trust in Brutus is his. Dutch has many similarities to the villain Richard III. His ruthless ambition, to the point where he would abandon Abigail to the Pinkertons, blinds him to the consequences of his actions. Richard is consumed by his lust for power, while Dutch's ambition leads him to a path of recklessness and destruction. Both men are skilled manipulators. Richard is a master of disguise and deceit. Dutch maintains a facade of leadership and charisma to influence the gang and achieve his own ends. As their ambitions spin out of control, both characters become increasingly suspicious, mean, and paranoid. Ultimately, both men's hubris leads to their downfall. It's worth noting that Dutch is a more complex character than Richard III. Richard is pretty much the evil archetype, whilst Dutch's descent is a more gradual and nuanced process. However, his fall from grace is a touching reflection on the corrupting influence of power on the fragile human psyche. On top of character similarities to Shakespeare, you have similarities in dialogue. The style, of course, is completely different, but the language used in both are remarkably rich and evocative. Characters speak with wit and humour. They're authentic, real people with real wants and needs. As an extra to the whole Shakespeare thing, the story of Beau and Penelope is remarkably similar to Romeo and Juliet. Star-crossed lovers from opposing great houses, caged by their family's wills. And much like Romeo and Juliet, those great houses fall due to their own arrogance and hubris. I just gotta say, man, that Braithwaite Manor scene has got to be one of the best scenes in a game ever. The writing, the music, good lord, it's an epic scene. I hope all of that demonstrates what an influence the Bard had on the writing in Red Dead Redemption 2. The game definitely draws on the enduring power of Shakespeare to create a compelling and resonant narrative. Death pervades every aspect of Red Dead Redemption 2. From the very beginning, with Davy's death, mortality is everywhere. We then learn that there was a woman called Jenny who died before him, and later we learn of Mac's death. As an aside, I've always wondered about that one in particular. Do you think maybe Milton just said that to Arthur to enrage him? Perhaps Mac lived, and that would be explored in Red Dead Redemption 3. Then we have the tragic deaths of Sean, then Kieran, then Hosea, and then Lenny. A lot of people die in this game, huh? And of course, finally, Arthur. Red Dead Redemption 2 explores the fragility of life with constant reminders of sickness, violence, and the passage of time. In regards to Arthur, we have the early signs of his sickness as discussed previously. We have his denial, his anger, his disappointment, then finally his acceptance, which blends into his redemption. His impending doom makes him question his entire life and live his last days as a better man. They even build his sickness into the mechanics of the game. Very clever move. The ephemeral nature of the Wild West and mortality are wrapped up together like one big bow, and the game depicts the end of the West with power lines and rapid industrialisation. The game shows us firsthand how technology and civilization are eroding the traditional way of life for outlaws like the Van der Linde gang. The gang's constant struggle for survival, from their lack of food at the start to the constant running from law enforcement, reflects the fleeting nature of their existence. Their way of life is becoming increasingly unsustainable, mirroring the transience of human life. The game's stunning visuals showcase the beauty and fragility of the natural world, another constant reminder all around you as you play of the cyclical nature of life and death and the impact human actions have on the environment. As Arthur confronts his mortality, he grapples with profound existential questions about the meaning of his existence. He questions his past actions and in some cases attempts to make up for them in his remaining time on Earth. Whereas Dutch's refusal to accept that the world has changed leads to his increasingly delusional plans, demonstrating the human tendency to cling to outdated ideals and resist inevitable change. Arthur's impending death impacts on his relationship with John becoming a focus of his redemption, as he attempts to lead John down a different path, to be a different man. Red Dead Redemption 2 pushes the boundaries of storytelling, not just for video games, but for all media. Yes, as a type of role-playing game, it could have more options as to how the story progresses, but then, really, this isn't a role-playing game. It's a gripping TV series where you get to experience what it's like to be the main character. It's a game that had to choose between role-playing and an incredible but railroaded narrative, and I'd say it chose right. Fallout 4 does not have anywhere near the gravitas of Red Dead Redemption 2. They're both good, but they have extremely different skeletons. This game pushes things in numerous ways, one being the incredible cinematic presentation of the gorgeous graphics. It's a truly breathtaking game. The mud in Valentine is like a Rembrandt, with a world that looks and feels truly real. Whether you are hunting in Big Valley or watching a cutscene, it is stupendous. The open world is amazing. Just the map alone is crazy, let alone that feeling you get when you ride your horse out into the wilderness in search of perfect pelts. Hunting in this game is addictive, and it feels to me like they spent a long time getting the mechanics just right for it. It's not a necessary thing, but nonetheless it's perfect. Hunting for satchels and new clothes is a relaxing and beautiful experience. The stunning design of the world encourages exploration, and the world has stories hiding in it. Around any bend, something can happen. It's incredibly impressive. The complex and morally grey characters are also a triumph of modern storytelling. Their development and emotional depth is simply jaw-dropping. Everyone has a backstory, everyone has wants and goals, and no one is safe. The cutscenes are a work of art in themselves. I find myself marvelling at the blocking and camera directions in so many shots. It's truly captivating and profoundly epic in scope. Ultimately, Red Dead Redemption 2, much like the works of Shakespeare, serves as a poignant reflection of the human condition. Through masterful foreshadowing, the game explores the timeless themes of mortality and ambition, and Arthur's tragic story arc, mirroring those of Shakespearean heroes, leaves an indelible mark on the players, forcing them to confront their own mortality. Red Dead Redemption 2 demonstrates the enduring power of storytelling and its ability to resonate with audiences across generations. It certainly got me in the feels and continues to bring me joy even today. Thank you so much for listening to my little essay. If you enjoyed it, please like or comment or subscribe. And I'll see you next time for more outfit videos.